Pretending you're intelligent is easy-ish. In the hierarchy of humans we admire most, smart people are number 2, after hot girls. Boys put up posters of Einstein in their dorm rooms, and girls who can't spell their own names call themselves sapiosexual. Now, we're all smart people here, so I assume we know what sapiosexual means. But just to be sure, please leave the definition in the comments. I'm asking for a friend. Anyway, how can you be worshipped as a genius without thinking an original thought or inventing anything? It's simple. You just pretend. You don't need to understand Inception, win a Nobel Prize, or even read a single book. You just need this 8-step game plan. Let's begin. Step number 1, mastering the jargon. The first step is mastering the jargon. For example, if you're a pharmaceutical sales rep for a banned herb, weed, and people ask what you do for work, how do you answer? You say you're working towards the synergetic exsanguination of a more sanguine species of Sapiens sativa seers in Salisbury. But what does that mean? I have absolutely no idea. Nobody else will have any idea either. But most people won't ask because they're scared of looking stupid. They'll just nod their heads and say, yeah, interesting. If anybody is stupid enough to press you, just spit out some insipid phraseology that sounds like a series of Shakespearean pretensions. Albert Einstein said that if you can't explain something in simple terms, you just don't understand it well enough. But what does he know? Einstein has only ever achieved 2 things in his life: revolutionizing physics and banging his cousin. Now, banging cousins is a power move. That's the kind of thing that only gets done by emperors, kings, and Cletus the Redneck. And I respect that. But revolutionizing physics? Nerdy nonsense. Ignore everything that clown said. Smart people know big words. Never use a small word when you can Google a bigger one. You're not trying to communicate clearly here. That's for normies. You're smarter than that. Just think like a lawyer who knows his client is guilty. Obfuscate and discombobulate as much as possible. If you can make people feel stupid, they will start thinking you're smarter than them. But is that enough? Of course not. You need something to talk about, and that brings us to step 2. Develop an opinion on everything. The words, "I don't know," should never pass your lips. Lips are not for admitting stuff. They're for eating, talking crap, and kissing Kayla, which is an emotional support potato I keep under my pillow. Shh. I don't know is what normies say. You're better than that. Always remember that you know everything even when you don't. If you're asked any question, answer quickly and confidently. If you're not asked, answer anyway. Having an opinion on everything might sound difficult, but it isn't really. You see, most people don't actually form their own opinions or spend any time thinking about the things they believe in. They just parrot whatever happens to be a popular opinion around them. Ask most men why murder is wrong, and they will mumble something about human life good, killers bad. Then they'll go play GTA and murder half a city for no reason at all. Women are not any better. They'll say, violence bad, and then simp over violent serial killers like Ted Bundy, or more recently, Wade Wilson, just because they're hot. You know what that means, boys? You will still get the death penalty. Don't even try whatever you're thinking about right now. Nevertheless, you don't need to reinvent the wheel here. You don't need to look into why men are obsessed with violent video games, why women are addicted to true crime podcasts, or why those same women are mailing their underwear and their nudes to serial killers. It's not your duty to try and understand these glaring contradictions in the human condition. Just cry over how you can't even get a high, and then force a smile. If some nerd studies that phenomenon, you can just copy his conclusions and shout them out louder. As long as those conclusions are popular, something like, video games are not real life, or the women begging serial killers to marry them are just trolling. If the conclusions are unpopular, treat them like you did your best friend's pee-pee when you first saw it in the urinal. Look at it and weep, but don't touch. That's the game here. You're not trying to make any original insights. Just take what people already believe and repeat it back to them in pseudo-intellectual language. Murder bad because victim family want revenge, and then killed killer's family want revenge too, causing endless cycle of murders. The people who have never thought about their own beliefs with any depth will think you are a genius. Stupid smarties will think you're copying the ancient Babylonians, but in reality, you're quoting the great Reddit philosopher, Fart Sniffer 66. Sadly, your enlightened opinion is no good if you just keep it to yourself. That's why you need step 3. Conversation interruptus. How do you show people you're smart? You just need 2 words. Well, actually, people love being corrected. They're just sitting around waiting for you to come and tell them that everything they think they know is wrong. If an engineer shows you a blueprint for a building that he's constructing, and it's not a triangle, tell him he screwed up. He might say stuff like, "What are you talking about? I have an engineering degree and 10 years of experience. What do you have?" Tell him that's an appeal to authority. It's a logical fallacy or something like that. The triangle is the strongest shape. You read that factoid on a bottle cap once when you were 12 and you never forgot. Because you are a genius. Checkmate, engineer moron. If you go to the doctor with a cold and he gives you a diagnosis that doesn't include cancer, ask him if he got a D in medical school. You checked WebMD and cancer was a possible cause of your symptoms. He will say colds almost never lead to cancer. Ask him if he's conducted a biopsy. Of course he hasn't, and you both know it. So, how can you be sure? As long as you're confident and never surrender, you will never lose. Even if the biopsy comes back negative, what's the big deal? You are just being thorough. It's the doctor's fault for being too lazy to run every possible test for your stuffy nose. Some people will still disagree and keep arguing even though you're always right. Don't worry. 75% of people who disagree with you are stupid. But what about the remaining 25%, you may ask? Well, science says that the remaining 25% are crazy. If you're not too keen on science, there's always step 4. Speak in quotes. So-called smart people, like Einstein, didn't usually quote other men. They just shared their own original ideas, which is stupid. What's the point of doing your own thinking when you can wait for other people to do all the work and just copy them? Quotes are the language of the learned. They inspire us for 3 seconds before we forget and scroll on to the next TikTok. Your quote should come from geniuses like Einstein and Mark Twain, or philosophers like Cardi B. If you run out of quotes, you could just make up one and attribute it to Crime and Punishment or War and Peace. These are both very Russian, very depressing, and very unreadable books. What they have is the advantage of being very famous. All 8 billion people in the world have heard of them, but only 3 people have ever read them. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to read through 1,400 pages of dense, old-timey prose from the 1800s just to prove you wrong. The people with the attention span to read Dostoevsky and Tolstoy don't usually hang out wherever it is you're spreading your quotes. The goal is to get to a point where you're such a fluent name dropper that you only speak in quotes. As Mark Twain once said, intelligent people use the words of the wise to burnish their own wisdom. Mark Twain also said, "I never said that." As a qualified quotidian, you will still get challenged by people who say, "Oh, those old quotes are outdated." That's why you need step 5. Step 5, I read an article somewhere. If a quote can't do the job, just quote a study. Studies are actually terrible as evidence, which is what makes them so good. But there's just one major threat. Some know-it-all might mention a study that contradicts your study. How do you deal with that? We just have to take a little detour into the broken world of academic publishing. Almost 3,000 studies are published every single day. And that's just in the field of medicine in America. On the PubMed database, nobody has managed to accurately count all the other studies on all the other subjects that are published in over 20,000 journals in all other countries of the world. But why so many, you may be asking? Well, long story short, college professors must publish or perish. Some of them publish a paper every 2 days. That might make you worry about the quality. Don't. They're all peer-reviewed. But what the hell does that term mean? Well, that means Professor 1 glanced at Professor 2's study and said that it was okay. It's all just one big system of approve my study and I'll approve yours so we can both keep our jobs. Surprisingly, college professors have not taken advantage of this system to publish a little bit of nonsense. Nope, not at all. They are actually publishing 1 million pounds of nonsense every single day. Whatever crazy idea you have, there's probably a study out there that supports it. We can go into how studies use convoluted language that nobody understands, or how they use complicated math that only 1 or 2 people understand. And even those 2 people can't be bothered to check it, but what's the point? And we could even get into how you can easily cook figures without actually cooking them. Let's say, for example, you want to study whether women prefer taller men or shorter men. You can rig that study for the short kings very easily. Just use Tom Cruise and Timothée Chalamet for the short gang. For the tall gang, pick random fry cooks, preferably in their Burger King uniforms. But there is no point in going into any of these statistical tricks because nobody actually reads studies anyways. Some smart aleck will insist that he read a study, but before you push, do you know what you're gonna find? He only read the headline of a Reddit post referencing the news article reporting on an interview with a scientist who mentioned the study for 2 minutes on a Joe Rogan's podcast. Geniuses might read the full news article, and the super geniuses might even track down the study itself, but they won't read it. They will only read the abstract. It's not their fault. This 200-word summary is the only part of the study that anybody can actually read. You have to pay $39.99 a month to unlock the remaining 12 pages. This is usually the part where I scream in anger at the audacity of such scammery. Then I log into Twitch and I give all of my money to my queen, Pokimane. Don't you get it now, my enlightened friends? You can't quote studies to support your point, and if some idiot quotes a contradictory study, you can destroy his argument on 100 different levels by explaining how the academic publishing system is completely broken. Except for your studies, of course. Those are perfect. Your scientists can't cook their numbers because they are not conducting any studies in the first place. They just make that nonsense up. This is not a joke, by the way. The system is so corrupt that the presidents of freaking Harvard and Stanford lost their entire careers for publishing nonsense studies. The Harvard president got away with it for 26 years. Then Israel and Hamas got into a war, and a bunch of her students started harassing Jews on campus, and then she reacted by doing nothing about it. She was summoned to Congress, where she dodged all the questions like a pro, which really pissed off the Jews. The Jews got so angry at this woman that they did the most horrible thing you can ever do to a college professor. They actually read her studies. And they didn't just read the abstract and the conclusion like you're supposed to. Nope, they read the whole thing and double-checked the numbers. Now, what did they find? Nonsense, of course. And it wasn't even original nonsense. It was nonsense copied from another nonsense artist. But what's the moral of the story? Well, if you can publish made-up nonsense, don't piss off the Jews. Piss off someone who can't read. True illiterates are very rare, though, so you're limited to Mexican grandmas, Puerto Rican uncles, and educated Americans. If you're not too depressed by the world already, let's move on to step 6 of pretending to be smart. Step 6. Be contrarian for the sake of it. Cardi B once said that contrarianism is the mark of an intelligent man, but you can't be contrarian on any of the big topics. You can't go around saying murder good or democracy bad. You also can't be contrarian on diverse subjects like weed or abortion or the Israel-Hamas war. You just pander to whoever you happen to be hanging with. People think you're smarter when you agree with them on controversial topics. Your contrarianism only makes you look smarter when you aggressively apply it to things that don't really matter. Things like pizza toppings. Oh, the normies are arguing over whether pineapples belong on pizza? Screw that. You are a brave rebel who puts broccoli and cabbage on your pizza. Where's your medal? No, you don't listen to Taylor Swift. That's basic. You only listen to classical music. But not that Mozart or Schubert. That's so basic. You listen to Thorkild Sigurdsson, a dead Danish composer that no one else has ever heard of. And for good reason. He only wrote one song, and it's not available on Spotify or some soulless streaming service. Only vinyl. If Thorkild Sigurdsson gets too popular, dump him for selling out and go simp for another talentless dead composer that may or may not have even existed. This is what smart people do. They're different. They hate popular things. As a smart man, you have to stand out. You can't watch Marvel movies or Mission Impossible like the rest of the normies. At least not when other people can see you. You only watch black and white French movies, with no subtitles, even though you can't speak French. This contrarianism and love for the obscure applies to everything that doesn't matter. Dish soap, clothing brands, cars, and even cryptocurrency. To hell with Bitcoin, you are a Ponzi coin kind of guy. All this contrarianism gets you a lot of attention. Now that can be dangerous. So, how do you protect yourself? Simple, you use step 7. Step 7. Cultivate an aura of mysterious intelligence. People try to understand geniuses. When Einstein died, the doctors performing the autopsy stole his brain so they could study it. You're no different. If you succeed in convincing people that you are smart, they will want to know things about you. Things like why you listen to Thorkild Sigurdsson or watch black and white movies from France, an excuse of a country that only exists because Germany is too bored to invade. Don't be stupid like Einstein. Never let anybody study you. Or worse, understand you. Never give a straight answer to any questions like why you like obscure things. Say something like, you just can't understand. It kills two birds with one stone. It makes the questioner feel stupid and keeps you mysterious. That's the smart play. You can never break the mystery. If people understand you, they might realize you're just pretending. But even with all these tactics, there will always be an occasional slip-up. And that's why you need the 8th and final step, the bluster. When you mess up, don't admit wrongdoing. Deny, deflect, and discombobulate. Remember the problems we discussed with scientific studies? You can use any of those tactics. But what if you made a factual error? Like saying, for example, that Columbus discovered America in 1776 when everybody knows that it was actually on 9/11. Don't despair. Just say you got your dates all mixed up with the dates of the American Revolution and start talking about the Revolutionary War to confuse your opponent and wow them with your knowledge of that particular war. Or you can just deny that you ever said the wrong date in the first place. Especially if there are just two of you. There are no witnesses, so why admit anything? Just go full bluster. How dare you? I said 9/11. What's wrong with your stupid ears? This tactic is called gaslighting. And if girls cry about their exes on TikTok are anything to go by, it works. Deny hard enough, angrily enough, and people might start wondering if they are the crazy ones. In conclusion, it looks like looking smart is a lot of work. It might be easier to just put the extra work and become moderately smart for real anyway instead of pretending to be super smart because you read a 2-sentence summary of a book on Goodreads. But no, that's stupid. Pretend until you die. Then cremate yourself so no one can steal your brain.